Patrick, so we get to Marine boot camp, changing your life. You wanting to be a Marine you either just told us, or I heard you say it somewhere, blurred line, you want to be a Marine for 30 years, you want to retire, you love it. Nothing more you want to do here. Well, probably more stuff after, but in this moment of time, you want to fully commit to being a Marine and doing all that. But somehow your career is cut short in 9 years, and you said a little over 9 years, somewhere in that range. And my question is why?
Yeah, man. That's the easy answer is I lost sight of the prize, man. I lost sight of the prize, and the prize being life. I was busy as when I was in the Fleet Marine Force. I was constantly deployed. And 3 deployments. I did a 15th MEU, a 31st MEU, Afghanistan, a 31st MEU in Afghanistan, and my combat deployments, they affected me, right? More really is my first one more than my second, because by the time I got to my second, I was like, there's really nothing that can happen to me, because if it would have happened, it would have happened in the first one. But it affected me, right? And it affected me in a way that I wasn't willing to admit, because I didn't want to admit that, 2 years later, 3 years later, that I was still like really, really like suffering from some of the events or whatever happened in the past. And, my ego almost killed me. And, I used to live, I just call it the would haves, could haves, and should haves of my deployments. And, man, it used to eat at me. Like it was always on my mind. And, I found a lot of comfort in alcohol. And I will say, I can honestly look, through this screen into both of your eyes and tell you with the honest to God's truth is I never showed up to work drunk. I never drank at work, and I never put the lives of any of my Marines in danger. Like my work was my saving grace, right? Because I loved the Marine Corps and I was really good at what I did. But remove me away from that environment, man. And any spare second I had, it was like I had to turn off my thoughts and my mind, and so I did that with alcohol. And I remember that was for years I did that, right? And I can tell you the moment I knew I was struggling it was after I had been home for about a week after one of my combat deployments, and I had went to the gym, and I have never experienced this. I had never experienced this prior to, and I haven't experienced it since then. But when I went into the gym, man, I literally saw the walls closing in on me. Like they were like moving in on me, right? And I just remember like, what's happening? I started to have a panic attack, and I turned around and I ran. Like I ran as fast as I could to my barracks room. And I lived by myself in the barracks at the time, and I had alcohol, man, and I started drinking, and it was like, it like helped my panic attack go away. It helped me like relax. It helped me just find that comfort. And so I found that comfort in alcohol, man, for years. And then one day I was sitting on my couch here at my house, and I was pissed drunk, man. And my thoughts were with me, and I was like, man. And I just remember thinking like, man, it's not working anymore, I guess. So like in my head, right, I'm like, I'm just not going to drink tomorrow. Right? That's the simple solution, right? Like, well, what's helped me suppress or helped like all these thoughts subside for so long is no longer working. Well, I just won't do it tomorrow. And man, what I found out real quick is I couldn't, that I had become hooked, right? It had me, and I didn't understand it. I didn't know, like as time progressed, right, it got worse and it got worse and it got worse. And, I became suicidal. I became homicidal. And man, I was just like, when the thought of dying, right, seems like a better option than the pain of living, like that's when it's bad, right? And that's where I was. But the thing is, I didn't know, like my pride, it kept me from one, admitting that I had a problem with like PTSD. I didn't want to admit that. Like, fuck that. Like, I don't have that shit. Like, my friends died, dude. Like, or like, who am I to complain about this? But then two, that I was suffering from this like addiction, if you will, right? Like you're weak. Or I remember looking at myself in the mirror sometimes being like, you're a weak motherfucker. Like, how are you going to let this liquid substance control your life the way it is, right? And so not being able to admit those two things, man, like almost killed me, luckily for me, I had a friend who I don't know, man, I blacked out one night and I must have said some stuff to him, because when I showed up to work that next day, my friends were there, and he was there too. And they're just like, what's going on, man? And I will say my buddy, he's my best friend in the world, man. We, even to this day. And I remember looking at him and I say, you need to get away from me because I'm about to beat your ass. I was mad at him, right? The funny thing is I had wanted nothing. Like, I was on the outside, I was this clean cut, well-spoken Marine. It's what everybody expected. It's what I expected of myself. But on the inside, man, I was dying and I was screaming for somebody to ask me how I was doing. And when it finally happened, right, my best friends in the world were like sitting there saying, hey, how are you? I'm like, fuck you, get away from me. Right. And so, like, again, there's this like just this weird thing of I just didn't want to admit it. So, I said, hey, like, I'm fine. Don't worry. I got this. You guys are tripping. And, it didn't take long for them to realize I didn't have it. The cat was out of the bag, and, friends do what friends do. And I got a call one day on a Sunday, and it was my really good friend and my boss, my staff NCOIC at the time. And he's like, hey, man, like, I'm not going to sit by and watch you, kill yourself. He said, after everything you've been through, I'm not going to watch you kill yourself this way. And I just was like defeated. I was defeated, man. I was defeated, and I said, I don't care, man, whatever you want to do. And we showed up the next day. We went to see the man. It was my major, my first sergeant, my master guns, and my buddy. And we're sitting in sitting in our little CP. And they were like, why the fuck are we here? Not in a rude way or not like it's an inconvenience. That's just how we talk. They're like, why the fuck are we here right now? And my buddy goes, True, because everybody called me True. True has something to tell you. And they just looked at me and I said, I think, because I didn't know what was wrong with me, man. I said, I think I'm an alcoholic. I can't stop drinking, and I want nothing more than to die right now. And it was just silent. And like, it felt like years of silence, but it probably was a few seconds. But the next words that came out of the mouth of those men were the reason I'm still here. They said, we had no idea. We're sorry. What can we do to help? And that was like the first time, man, I like this weight. We hear people describe like I had weight lifted off my shoulders. I had a weight lifted off my shoulders that day. And my response to him was like, I don't even know what the fuck is wrong with me. So I don't know how you can help me. But what they did do is they did help me, right? They sent me to a facility. They found me a place that we started looking into what was actually wrong with me. And I got to work on myself for a very, very, very long time, And when I got out, I still had, I think, 5 months left on my contract. So I went back to being an instructor with a lot of stipulations, right? At the end of the day, and I 100% agree with the decision of my command. I was a liability, and they didn't want me to go back to instructing, but I was like, this is all I have. Like, please, like, I had never given them any reason to doubt me, because again, I never, work was my saving grace. It was the only time where I was like not drinking. It was the only time I wasn't thinking about dying, right? And so they agreed to allow me to go back with a lot of stipulations, right? I had to blow, like, if I had an hour, if they called me to blow, I had to be there within an hour. I had more urinalysis in that last 5 months than I did in the prior, 8.5 years, which I was okay with. I had my own Sacco, like literally had my own Sacco. He was a gunnery sergeant, and I used to have to call him. I believe it was daily, just to check in to say, hey, I'm good. But I was willing to do what I needed to do so I can stay there. And so they had asked, or we were trying to figure out my next steps. We being I didn't just come back and my command's like, okay, you're on your own. It was still that team effort, right? The team effort is what got me through this. And we were trying to figure out if, so the suggestion was, hey, we need to start a MedSep package. They wanted me to MedSep because just because I went to work on myself doesn't mean I left there and I was cured, right? I haven't had alcohol. I don't do alcohol. I don't do nicotine. I still work on myself, man. I haven't had any of that in my body for almost 10 years now, right? Like, well, I guess it would be like 9 years, 6 months if we're trying to be accurate with it.
Mm-hmm.
9 years, 6 months, I haven't put anything in my body as a result, but I'm still working on myself. So when trying to figure out my next steps, I open up my MOL one day. I'm getting ready to see to make sure our buses and everything are scheduled for the day. And it says, you have web orders, right? Marine Online, you have web orders. And I'm like, all right. And I opened it. And as soon as I saw the web orders, I knew, like, right, there's these moments in my life where I'm certain, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, where you just know, right? You just know, like, you just know. And I just knew, like, I go, this is it, right? This is it. So I had orders to Victor 1-7, right? 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, 29 Palms. And I just knew, I was like, there's no way I can go up there. I'm going to die. Like, I'm going to die. Because I was I was 2 months out of, I was 2 months removed from, poisoning my body, 2 months removed, or 2 months into just really starting to work on myself. And, I'm not here to bash the Marine Corps in any way whatsoever, because I love that. I love that institution, but 29 Palms it's an unforgiving place, right? It's an unforgiving place, and there's a lot of things that happen there because of where it is, and the lack of resources, or things to do. So I just couldn't. I knew in my heart, I'm like, man. So I called the monitor. And I wasn't going to give him no sob story. Like, it's just it's not my style, right? I wasn't going to tell him, like, oh, this is where I'm at. Like, please. I just said, hey, is there any way I can change my orders to stay? I'll even go to the West Coast. I just can't go to 29 Palms, because I needed, like, they didn't have what I needed up there as far as support, as far as the resources that I needed to stay alive. I mean, really, that's what it came down to. And it's like, no, man, you've been stuck in a bubble, because I was in this, like, 3-mile radius for my whole career, right? Between San Mateo 62 area and then SOI, I was in this little 3-mile radius for my whole career. He's like, no, you've been there way too long. He goes, it's time for you to expand. Yeah. And I said, all right, well, I've got to deny orders, right? And that was it, man. He goes, cool. And I had to sign an RE3 Oscar, I think is what the paperwork was. And I denied orders. I didn't get my promotion I had been selected for E6. Finally, I was super stoked about that, and I didn't get my promotion. No big deal, though, right? It's okay. Like, life is life, and I don't have control of the external factors. But for me at that point, right, I was sad. Don't get me wrong. I was sad, and I wallowed for a while. But at the end of the day, like, hindsight, 10 years later, man, like, it was the best decision I ever made, because I can tell you my life today is nothing what it was back then, right? I miss the Marine Corps almost daily, man. Like, I'm not kidding when I say that. I have a friend in the Marine Corps who sent me pictures the other day. They were doing some field practice and stuff. And I was like, man, I miss the Marine Corps. He goes, I thought you'd like these, right? Because I loved it, man. Like I said, it helped a boy become a man.